truly sick and tired of yelling at the people that you love the most. If that sounds like you, you're in the right place. If you're exhausted from everything, feeling like a battle, you're in the right place. And if you are ready to say goodbye to all that guilt and hello to laughing more and truly enjoying this precious time with your kids, you are in the right place. This is a lot of what we're going to be covering. And in fact, today's session, I have a huge agenda for you. We're going to be talking about why kids really misbehave in the first place. We're going to explore why timeouts and punishments actually make your kids' behavior worse. I'm going to give you the 5 R's of rockstar consequences, which you're going to love. And then towards the end of our session, I'm going to share with you a little bit about our online training program, and I'll give you enrollment information if you're interested. And then I'm going to be staying on to answer your questions. So we have a lot to cover, but we're going to get it done. Now, I want to ask you a question. I would love to know what behaviors you are struggling with the most. So you should see a list of misbehaviors. If you had to pick the one most frustrating thing happening at your house, tell me what that would be. And I know it's hard to pick just one because some of you may be thinking, hey, we have all of this happening at our house, but you have to pick one for this exercise. So I'll give you a minute for everybody else to weigh in, and let's take a look at the results. Okay, our survey says very clearly that kids not listening, having to remind and raise your voice to get action is the most frustrating thing for the majority of you at almost 68%. And let's see, it looks like the back talk, disrespect, and attitude is coming in as number 2. And quite honestly, those are related, right? If you have one, you often have the other. So I know it's kind of unfair of me to ask you to pick just one, but clearly those are the biggest issues with kind of a smattering of everything else. So again, that tells me that you're in the right place because that's what we're going to be talking about in this session. How do we get our kids to listen without us having to resort to yelling and getting frustrated and angry? Because that's not fun for anybody. Now, speaking of nagging, reminding, and yelling, I happen to know a little bit about this from personal experience. So you saw a picture of my guys as they are now, big teenagers. But this is a picture of my same little fellas when they were much younger. And back then, I truly was the queen of nagging, reminding, and yelling. And I did not want to be that yelling mom, right? Who does? But timeouts weren't working and counting to 3. And, I just found myself struggling with how to get them to behave and listen and do what they were supposed to do. And pretty much every day I would find myself in a power struggle that ended up with me raising my voice. And I had what I describe as my tipping point parenting moment one night. It was after I had tucked them into bed and I was kind of settling in for the night. And I actually thought that I was getting sick because my throat was so sore and scratchy and raw. And of course, I realized I wasn't getting sick. The reason my throat hurt is because I had been yelling at my kids so much that day. In fact, right before I tucked them into bed, I had this big yelling rant about who knows what. But I thought, oh my goodness, Amy, the last thing that they remembered about you before they put their sweet little heads on the pillow was me being the big yelling mom. And I thought, how did we ever get to this place? You think about what your life is going to be like as a parent. And let me tell you, this was not it for me. So that night was my tipping point where I said, I cannot do this anymore. I can't keep yelling at the people that I love the most. And that's when I began studying positive parenting strategies. And when I began to use those strategies with my kids, things started to turn around for us. Our morning routines and our bedtime routines started to go much more smoothly. When I'd ask my kids to do something, they would do it without a lot of fuss and pushback. The sibling fights were few and far between. But honestly, the biggest difference was with me because I wasn't yelling anymore. Things were not perfect, right? They're kids. Stuff is going to happen. But when it did, I had my tools. I had a toolbox. So I knew exactly what I needed to do to turn it around. And I finally felt like I was doing a good job again as a mom. And I had not felt that way in a very long time. So I was on a total mission to share these tools with other parents. And my business background was in instructional design. I created training programs for Fortune 500 companies. That was my job. So I took that expertise and I created the Positive Parenting Solutions curriculum. And I have been teaching this program to parents all over the world ever since. So I'm excited to share a little bit of that with you today, but I really wanted to share my yelling mom experience because I want you to know that if you ever feel like the yelling mom or the yelling dad, you're definitely not alone because I've lived it. And when I talk with parents, no matter where I am, I hear the same stories over and over again. And it's always some version of this vicious cycle. It starts out by asking your kids to do something in your nicest mom or dad voice, but then nothing happens, right? And so you fall into that cycle of repeating and reminding and repeating and reminding and repeating and reminding. And eventually you get so sick and tired of that that you just lose it and have the big adult tantrum. Get angry and frustrated and yell. And how many times do we have to go through this? And then, of course, after that big adult tantrum, we end up feeling totally guilty. And then from our kids' perspective, now we're the bad guys. So they were the ones who weren't listening in the first place, and we end up being the bad guys. So tell me in the chat if that vicious cycle sounds familiar to you. Maybe it's not an everyday occurrence like it was for me, but tell me if that feels at all familiar. Okay, everybody, please take a look at the chat right now. I hope so much that this gives you some measure of comfort that you are not alone. Look how many of us have experienced this. So you are definitely not alone. And if that vicious cycle sounds familiar to you, let me share with you my vision. The vision that I hold for you personally and every single parent that I work with is that very soon you won't even remember the last time that you raised your voice. You won't even remember. I can't promise you're never going to yell or guarantee that because let's face it, we are all human and we are going to mess up. But I want you to have to think really long and hard. My goodness, it's been so long I can't even remember. And the reason is because you have the tools. When misbehavior pops up, you know exactly what to do. So let me know again in the chat if that vision sounds good to you. Does that resonate with you? And if it does, I want you to stick with me for the next 51 minutes in this session because that's where I want to take you. I know that in our time together, I can't solve every single problem that you're having, but I promise you, you will be much closer to that vision at the end of the session than you are right now. So I'm seeing in the chat, everybody is really liking that idea. So let's get started and make that happen. Now, before we can get to the point where we are not yelling anymore, we have to understand the answer to this question. Why do kids really misbehave in the first place? Are they just trying to make us crazy? So to dig into this, I want to share a few foundation principles with you from Adlerian psychology, and this is in your note-taking guide. Everything that we teach to parents in our program is based on the principles of Adlerian psychology and positive discipline. It helps us understand the motivation for our kids' behavior and their misbehavior. So the first foundation principle we have to know is this. Kids have a hardwired, non-negotiable need for attention and power. These are your kids' core emotional needs. So once their physical needs for food and shelter and safety are met, their primary emotional needs are that of attention and power. Think about your kids as having an attention bucket and a power bucket. Every single day, they must have a sufficient dose of positive attention and positive power from you. Because what happens is if kids don't get a sufficient dose of positive attention every single day, that need for your attention is non-negotiable. They have to have it, right? So they will do whatever they have to do to get your attention. And unfortunately for us, that often presents itself as negative behavior, misbehavior. So it might be that child who's whiny and clingy and acting helpless and how frustrating is that for us? But think about that behavior from the child's perspective. When she starts whining, what do we typically do? Well, don't we almost instinctively pick her up to get her to stop whining? Or we say, now use your big girl voice. Or sometimes we just give in. Fine, whatever. Have the cookie before dinner. Just stop whining. Well, guess what? We just gave her a huge dose of attention for that negative behavior. So from her perspective, that behavior worked beautifully to get our attention. So why wouldn't she use it again and again? Now, this concept that I'm going to talk about in a second, I hope you'll write down. It is so important. And that is that kids only continue the behaviors that work for them. So if the behavior works to get your attention, you can be sure she's going to use that behavior again and again, because positive attention and negative attention are both reinforcing enough to make that child want to continue the behavior again and again. Kids only continue those behaviors that work for them. We're going to come back to this concept again and again. So let's take a look at some other behaviors that are actually working for your kids. What about sibling fighting? Let me know in the chat if you have this happening at your house. So much of sibling rivalry and fighting is about competition for your attention. Have you ever noticed that the minute you get on the phone or you're trying to have a conversation with your partner, isn't that exactly when your kids will start fussing and fighting with each other? Because they know you'll stop whatever you're doing in that moment to go and find out who started it and what do we have to do to break it up. Kids will get our attention one way or another. Now, another exhausting, frustrating, attention-seeking strategy happens at night. Tell me if you have a bedtime dawdler, that child who drags out the bedtime routine forever. She needs another drink of water, another back rub, a kiss from daddy, a peek into the bed for monsters, another trip to the potty, a song, a dance, you name it. It goes on and on and on and on. Look at all of you in the chat. Oh my goodness. There are a lot of you that are dealing with this bedtime issue, and you know how exhausting it is. But let's think about the behavior from the child's perspective. With every hoop that you have to jump through to get that kid to go to bed, it keeps you with her longer. So from her perspective, it is the perfect strategy for getting your attention and maintaining your attention, and that's why she uses it night after night after night. Kids will get our attention any way they have to. Now, some of you might be thinking, Amy, I'm not sure, because I really feel like I give my kids plenty of positive attention. Their attention bucket runneth over, but we're still having these behaviors. Well, if that is the case for you, and you really do give your kids plenty of positive attention when they're not demanding it, and that's the key, plenty of positive attention, but you're still having these frustrating misbehaviors, it is very likely that your situation has escalated to a power struggle. Remember we talked about the attention bucket? Well, your kids also have a power bucket, and every single day they must have a sufficient dose of positive power. Now, let's dig into that, because I don't know about you, but I always found that concept confusing. What does that even mean, positive power? When I refer to positive power or personal power, I'm referring to having a sense of independence, autonomy, some control over their own world. And keep in mind, these needs are not something that your kids just decide that they want one day. These needs are part of their biological makeup. You know, even an infant, if we hold the infant down on the changing table and try to restrain him, he will instinctively fight back, right? That need for autonomy is just the way that we're all wired. We all need to feel like we have some control over our own world. But for kids, they typically don't feel like they have a lot of control because they have us, people who call all the shots. We decide what they wear and what they'll eat and when they'll go here and there and when they do their homework and when they do their chores. And oh my goodness, from their perspective, it never ends. And when a person of any age is feeling out of control, feeling powerless, they will act out in ways to get that power. And for kids, again, most often it presents itself as negative behavior. So it could be an all-out tantrum, that toddler tantrum or teenage tantrum. Gives the child a huge hit of power because it leaves us feeling powerless, right? And here's something I encourage you to write down, super important. Your kids get a hit of power when their behavior leaves you feeling angry, frustrated, ruffle your feathers, get under your skin. that is a big time power rush for a kid. Because think about it. To get a big grown up adult all bent out of shape, that is a big time power hit. And again, we know that kids only continue the behaviors that work for them. So if they get that power hit from you, they're going to use that behavior again and again. Now, for those of you with younger kids, I want you to really pay attention to these three power struggles: mealtime, bedtime, and pottying, because these are the three classic power struggles for the younger set. Why? Because in these three areas, your kids have legitimate power. They are in control. Because no matter what you do, no matter how much you coax and prod and beg and plead and bribe, you cannot make them eat, you can't make them sleep, and you can't make them potty, and they know it. So it's the perfect opportunity for them to dig in their heels and fight you every single step of the way. Again, kids will get their power any way they have to. The more verbal they become, it's the back talk and attitude, ignoring, badgering, doing the opposite of what we want them to do. Tell me in the chat if these behaviors are familiar. These are power behaviors. These are the ways that our kids dig in their heels and say, you may think you're the boss of me, but you're not. They battle us over homework and chores because every kid on the planet knows that we parents care a lot about homework and chores. They know we are deeply invested in homework and chores. So it's the perfect opportunity for them to dig in their heels and fight us every step of the way. Now, as I go through these different power struggles, I can almost feel our collective blood pressure starting to boil because these are so maddening, right? These are the things that make us crazy. Well, as we think about these power struggles, this next concept that I'm going to talk about is critically important for you to understand, both in why the power struggles happen and what we need to do to correct them. So as we think about these frustrating power struggles, we have to remember that human beings are born with free will, right? Free will. So if your child is 18 months old or 18 years old, he has the free will to listen and cooperate and take responsibility and do the right thing. And he has the free will to dig in his heels and fight you every single step of the way. And I know that doesn't feel fair, right? Because you're the parent and you're bigger and stronger and it's your house and because you said so and all of that good stuff. But you know what? None of that matters one little bit because your people have free will. And in the end, the decision on whether or not to behave, to cooperate, to do what they're supposed to do, to listen, it's always their choice. It's always their choice. We think that we can make our kids behave. We can force them to submit to our will. And yes, you can do those things temporarily, but I promise you, it is never a sustainable strategy because your people have free will and they can fight us every step of the way. So what does that mean from a parenting perspective? It means that we had better be using strategies that work with their hardwired, non-negotiable, no getting around it need for power and control rather than fighting it. Because fighting it is never going to work long term. And unfortunately, many of the parenting tactics out there are actually working against the child's need for power and control. They're working against the way the child is naturally wired. And so for you, if parenting ever feels exhausting, if it ever feels like you're doing the same strategies over and over again and it's not working, like you're banging your head against the wall and it's not changing, I can almost guarantee that you are using strategies that are working against the child's need for power and control. And that explains why it's so exhausting, right? You're working against the way that child is naturally wired. You're working against biology. So that's why it doesn't work, and that's why it feels exhausting for you. So let me give you some examples of what I mean, those strategies that work against your child's need for power. And I want to start with time out because this is kind of the go-to strategy for so many of us. Either you currently use time out or you have used it at one time. And I want to define what I mean by timeout so we're all talking about the same kind of timeout. I'm referring to when the child misbehaves and we send him to timeout, to the naughty chair, to his room, the corner, his step, for 5 minutes, so he can think about his behavior. Well, if any of you would describe your kids as strong-willed, powerful, spirited, you probably already know that timeout typically escalates the power struggle, right? Because once a child knows that he is an independent being, he also knows that you can't make him stay in timeout. I mean, what are you going to do? Sit on him in the naughty chair? Parents do ask me, Amy, should I hold the door shut to keep him in timeout? Well, really, if we have to hold the door shut to keep that kid in timeout, do we think for a minute that he's considering the choices that he made and how he might make a better choice next time? No, that is not happening. It's all about winning. The strong-willed child sees timeout as a total challenge. And let me tell you, we'll never win that battle because these people have unlimited energy and endurance. They're going to win it every time. So if timeout is not working for you, please take heart. It's not you and it's not your kid. It is a classic example of one of those strategies that totally works against your child's biological need for power and control. What about counting 1, 2, 3? This is a very popular strategy, but let's dig into what this really teaches our kids. When we do the count, it really trains our kids that they don't have to listen the first time, right? Because they have 2, 2.5, 2 3/4, 2 7/8. I'm getting serious now. 3 chances before they really have to respond. And then parents tell me all the time, they end up looking at each other saying, okay, now what do we do? And then they put the kid in timeout or some other crazy punishment. So again, if counting is not working, it's not you, it's not your kid. It's an example of a strategy that's just working against the way your kid is wired. These are all examples of command and control strategies. We as the parent trying to command and control our kids. As I said, that's never going to work long term. Now, the granddaddy of the command and control strategies is really punishment, right? Exerting our power and control over somebody else. And from a positive discipline perspective, we define punishment as any tactic that would cause your child to feel or experience blame, shame, or pain. That can be physical pain or that can be emotional pain. And punishment can totally work in the short term, usually because the child is afraid of you. And I do think that begs the question, do we want our kids to behave, to do the right thing, make good choices because they're afraid of us or because their internal compass is directing them? Because I do promise you, your kids aren't going to be afraid of you forever. Punishment can work in the short term. The reason it typically fails long term is it's missing the key ingredient of the learning event. And the reason is that when a person of any age is experiencing or processing blame, shame, or pain, their instinctive reaction is to shut down. It's almost like that wall goes up because they have to protect themselves from that blame, shame, and pain. So whatever it is that we're blathering on and on about, it is not getting through. That child is in shutdown mode. Now, punishment does teach some very important lessons. It actually teaches kids to be really good liars. We don't like the idea of kids lying, but we have to understand that from their perspective, it's a perfectly reasonable response. If you are a kid and you mess up and you know that blame, shame, and pain is coming down the pike, are you going to want to be honest about that? No, of course not. It's perfectly understandable for them to lie to get out of blame, shame, and pain. We put kids in a no-win situation. The other thing it teaches them is how to get revenge. And kids who are punished, blame, shame, and pain over time get very good at acting out with revenge. Jane Nelson, who is a renowned positive discipline educator and author, I think says it so beautifully about punishment. Where did we ever get the crazy idea that in order to make children do better, first we have to make them feel worse? Why would we think that, right? Kids are no different than we are in terms of processing emotion. If you went to work and you messed something up and your boss just totally read you the riot act, you would be mortified. If you messed up the checkbook at home and your spouse, who you love and look up to and care about, just went on and on and on about it, you would be crushed and you wouldn't want to get close to that person, I promise. It's exactly what happens with our kids. The good news is that we can hold them accountable for their behavior. We can teach them to make better choices with discipline. Punishment and discipline could not be any farther apart on the spectrum. Where punishment is blame, shame, and pain, discipline comes from the Latin root discipulus, or disciple would be the word we would use today, which as a verb means to teach or to train. So we want to focus on strategies that teach or train our kids to make better choices without blame, shame, and pain. Now, I'm going to ask you a question in a minute, but I just want to respond to something that Misty said in the chat. She said, I can't even choke back the tears. I feel so guilty. Please, anybody, all of you, if anything that I say in this session makes you feel guilty or makes you feel bad about the way we've handled things in the past, can we please agree to let that go? This session is about learning new strategies that are going to be so much more empowering for you, so much more effective, and be so much better for your kids. That's what we're focusing on today. I told you that I'm a recovering yeller, so there is plenty that I've done that I do not feel proud of, but we are letting all of that go and just focusing on new, more empowering strategies. Can I have a thumbs up on that, everybody? So tell me in the chat that you are on board with letting the baggage go. All right, so I want to ask you a couple of quick questions before I get into consequences. The first one is, does this need for power and control make sense to you? Your child's need for power and control, does that resonate with you? Take a minute and weigh in on that if you would. I just want to make sure that everybody is on board here before we jump on. Okay, I'm seeing that just about everybody, 99% of you are saying, yep, makes total sense. So that is good. I'm going to keep on going. The next question that I want to ask you is this. Thinking about your kids, where would you say they need a boost? Is it in the attention bucket, the power bucket, or both? So again, weigh in on the poll and tell me what you think about that. Attention, power, and both. In the meantime, I'll get another little drink here. Okay, looks like about 85% of you are saying your kids need a boost in the power bucket or both. And I'll tell you, that's a very common response when I ask this question. I think because for most of us, we don't really understand our kids' need for power. I didn't. And when I was having one power struggle after another, that was a big old aha moment for me. The other thing that comes into play is personality. And I just want to touch on that for a minute. You know, we often talk about our kids' personalities. I have a strong-willed or a powerful or a laid-back child, and certainly their personality and their temperament plays into their behavior. However, that is not the full story. In fact, our personalities, the parent personality, plays a huge role in our kids' behavior. One of the things that we have parents do in our online training program is go through a parent personality assessment. So you can uncover which aspects of your personality bring out certain behaviors in your kids. So for me, when I go through the assessment, I'm like off the charts controlling. And because of my controlling personality, I tend to invite a lot of power struggles from my kids, which makes sense. The more that I want things done my way or the highway, the more I play Miss Bossy Pants, their natural reaction is to push back. A basic fight or flight response. Kids can't easily flee, so they have no choice but to push back. Now, your personality may invite power struggles like mine, may invite helplessness or other behaviors, but the thing that we have to remember is that misbehavior is never, ever, 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 ever just a kid problem. We play an equal role in that. And if we don't address our contribution to the misbehavior, we're never going to be successful long-term in correcting the child's behavior. So think about that, how your personality plays in. If there are two parents in the home, how your partner's personality plays in. You can see that it can get a little bit complicated. Okay, one thing that gives me a sense of comfort is I have a lot of controlling friends here, so thanks for that. Thanks for the shout out there. And then Naomi, I'm going to share with you a little bit later where you can get that parent personality assessment. So hang tight on that. I'll give that to you in a little bit. All right, so what I want to do now is talk about consequences, specifically the 5 R's of fair and effective consequences. I'm going to give you a formula for these 5 R's, which you're going to love, by the way. And then I'm going to go through some examples and answer a lot of what-if questions. So I'm covering a lot of ground in this next section. I'm just giving you a big old warning. So my suggestion to you is to just sit back, take it all in, take notes on everything that I'm saying, because if you're trying to type your questions in the chat, I probably won't catch them anyway, and you'll miss the answer. So sit back, take it all in. And this formula that I'm going to give you is great for kids around the age of 2.5 all the way up to teens. They have to be verbal enough to go through this process that I'm going to explain. Now, if your kids are younger than that, then we would use different tools from our toolbox instead. But I want you to take good notes here, because you're going to be here before you know it, and you will want this formula. So here we go with the 5 R's. The first of the 5 R's is that the consequence must be respectful. That means it would not involve any blame, shame, or pain for the child. And we now know that we play an equal role in this, right? So we have to make sure that we are dealing with consequences in a calm and respectful way. So that means that we've got to use a calm voice and handle it in a very calm way. But let's be honest, when you're annoyed and frustrated with your kid's behavior, it's hard to find your calm voice, right? So if you can't, please, please, please do not deal with it in that moment, right? 99% of stuff does not have to be dealt with in that moment. You can wait. You can wait 10 or 15 minutes. Even if the child has moved on to something else, that's okay. You can say, sweetie, let's talk about what happened a little while ago with your brother on the train tracks. You can always bring the child back to it, but if you try to deal with it in the moment, when you're frustrated and angry and you're talking with your big dad voice and your big mom voice, we know that child is going to shut down. That wall is going to go up, and whatever it is that we're blathering on and on about, it is not getting through. So wait until we can handle it in a calm and respectful way. That's the first R. The second R, everybody, is a biggie. This is the one that parents most often miss. So circle it on your note-taking guide, whatever you have to do to remember it. It's so important. And that is that the consequence must be related to the misbehavior, because we want that learning event to take place, right? So we want it to be connected in their minds so the learning event happens. So as an example, the related consequence for not wearing a bike helmet is you don't get to ride your bike. The related consequence for not brushing your teeth is you don't get to eat sweets or goldfish or pretzels or crackers or anything else that might turn to sugar on your teeth. Because here's the deal, Brooke. I can't force you to brush your teeth, right? At least not without a power struggle. Now, I could put her in a headlock and I can force that toothbrush in her mouth, but come on, we know that's not going to end well for either one of us. So, Brooke, sweetie, it's up to you. If you choose not to brush your teeth, that's fine. However, we'll have to change your diet. And again, anything that's going to turn to sugar on your teeth is going to be off limits. So the crackers, the pretzels, all that good stuff, off limits. So what I've done is put the control in her hands. And I will tell you that after a day or two of strictly vegetables and protein, she will be brushing her teeth with no fussing whatsoever. Not that there's anything wrong with vegetables and protein, but I'm just telling you, it works. It works like a dream. For older kids, if you miss curfew, well then you're not going to get to go out with your friends the following weekend. And if you don't turn off the video game when I ask, well then you're going to lose your video privileges, right? It makes sense. It's connected. Now, if Jeremy did not turn off the video game when I asked, and I said, young man, that's it. You are not going to the birthday party this weekend. How do you think he would respond? Oh, that is so not fair. You are so mean. I hate you and all that drama. Well, he'd be right about it not being fair. It's not fair. It's not related at all. The birthday party has nothing to do with the video games. That is an example of a willy-nilly consequence. That is an act of parent desperation where we are just grabbing things out of the air. I'm taking away this and I'm taking away that and I'm taking away the next thing. Well, all of a sudden we've taken everything away, but the behavior is still happening. That is an indication that we've been using willy-nilly consequences. Here's the thing about consequences, and I hope you'll write this down. Your kids don't have to like them. In fact, they probably won't. They don't have to like them, but they must feel fair. When they feel unrelated, when they feel willy-nilly, the anger gets totally turned on you. And when the anger is turned on you, your child is not taking personal responsibility. They're not owning it. And we know for a person of any age to change their behavior, they have to own it and take responsibility. Let me tell you, that's not happening when it's willy-nilly, when it feels unfair to the child. It's going to be all about you, how mean you are, and the anger is going to be directed at you. So make sure that it's related to the misbehavior. Okay, now for everybody in the chat who's having a little panic attack right now, what's the related consequence for sibling rivalry and homework and tantrums and not taking a bath and not eating? All of those things, guys, just let that go right now. Do not even stress about that for 1 second. If you can't think of the obvious related consequence for a specific behavior, it probably means that consequences are not the right tool. So take a deep breath, let that all go, and a little later on, I'll share with you where you can get other tools. All right, so it's going to be respectful, it's going to be related to the misbehavior, and then the third R, the consequence must be reasonable in duration, because consequences are not intended to make kids suffer. They're intended to help them learn. And so to do that, it only has to be reasonable. So as an example, a 4-year-old who's throwing puzzle pieces around the room and she knows that that's not okay, it would be reasonable to pack away the puzzle for the rest of the day. For a 14-year-old who is texting at the dinner table and she knows your rules for technology, it would be reasonable for her to lose her phone privileges for a week. Just keep it reasonable based on the child's age and development. Now, after respectful, related, reasonable, the fourth R is another make or break R, and that is that the consequence must be revealed in advance. So your child has the power to make a choice between the appropriate behavior and the consequence. When she knows ahead of time exactly what you expect and exactly what the consequence will be, well, then she has the power to determine how things are going to work out for her, right? Giving kids the power doesn't mean they always get their way. You are the parent. It is your job to create those limits and the guidelines, but within that, she must be able to influence how things work out for her. So we want to reveal that consequence in advance, and then we're going to close the loop by having the child repeat back. So Zoe, sweetie, just so we're on the same page, can you repeat back to me our new rule and what the consequence will be if you choose not to follow the rule? Once Zoe repeats back, then we have that verbal agreement. Everybody's on the same page, and it's a beautiful thing. So if I have to follow through and implement the consequences, there will be no surprises, right? She can't be mad at me. She can only be mad at herself. Brody, will this work with younger kids? Yes, it will work with younger kids. This reveal in advance and have them repeat back as long as they're verbal enough. And we talked about that. But you're just going to use very simple words, short sentences, but reveal in advance, have them repeat back, works like a dream for younger kids as well. Now, I'm going to give you an example in just a second, but I want everybody to just take this in. Okay, there are 5 R's. Look at that list. When you are dealing with consequences, you must have all 5 R's, because if you're missing any of them, it's going to feel like punishment to your kids. It's going to feel like blame, shame, and pain, and we know that's not effective for long-term behavior change. So make sure that you have the 5 R's. Take the time to think them through before doing willy-nilly consequences. So I'm going to give you an example of how we would reveal in advance and have them repeat back. The example that I'm going to use is video games, because little kids love their handheld games or playing with mom's iPhone, all the way up to big kids who love the Xbox and iPad and computer and all that nonsense. But they don't always love following the rules. So I'm going to pretend like that's been the issue at my house with video games. It's been going on for a while now, and I've about had it with the video games. So I'm going to sit down and have a little conversation with them. The key is I cannot have this conversation when I'm angry or frustrated or they're upset, because we know that's a big waste of time. They'll shut down, and what's the point, right? So I'm probably going to have this conversation one night after dinner. We're all in a good and happy place, and the conversation will go something like this. By the way, I'm giving you a script here, so take really good notes, because you can take the same script and use it for whatever the issue is at your house. So here's how the script would go. You know what, guys? I have noticed that we have been having a little bit of an issue with video games lately. It seems like when I ask you to turn off the video game, either you ignore my request or there's a lot of grumbling and groaning, and that's not okay, because, of course, having video games is a privilege, and there are responsibilities that go along with that. So I'm very calm. I have a smile on my face. And I don't know if you heard this, but I started the sentence with, I've noticed. I've noticed. It's very disarming. I didn't say, you never listen to me or you always ignore me. because we know they would have gotten defensive, that wall would have gone up, and the conversation would have been over. So you start with, I've noticed. Let them know what you're concerned about, and then be very clear about what you expect. So guys, in the future, my expectation is that when I ask you to turn off the video game, I expect that you're going to turn it off and without any grumbling and groaning. Now, I'll give you a 5-minute warning so you can save your game, and you may want to set a timer so you know how long 5 minutes is. But I'm not going to give second chances. I'm not going to give reminders. It's up to you to remember the new rule. Now, how do you guys feel about that? Does that feel like a reasonable expectation for the privilege of having video games? And I do want to remind you that video games are a privilege. Computers, iPads, phones, good old-fashioned old school television, those are all privileges and not rights. Okay, everybody looks like you're in agreement that we're being perfectly reasonable here. I think so too. So now they know what I expect, but we've had this issue in the past, so I'm going to go ahead and reveal a consequence. So guys, I am sure that we're not going to have any issues with this, but I want to let you know that if I ask you to turn off the video games and you ignore my request, or there's any grumbling or groaning or any, oh, please, Mom, just 5 more minutes, any of that, you're going to lose your video privileges for the next week. Okay, so where are we at this point? They are now fully informed, right? Because they know exactly what I expect. And they know exactly what the consequence will be. They are fully informed, but again, I don't want to stop there. I want to close that loop by having them repeat back. So guys, just so we're on the same page here, can you repeat back to me our new rule for video games and what the consequence will be if you choose not to follow the rule? Once they repeat back, everybody is on the same page, and it's a beautiful thing. So let me ask you a question now. At this point, who will decide if she gets to keep her video privileges? Who will decide? She will. That's right. Everybody's saying she will. She will. She will decide based on the choice that she makes, right? If she turns off the video games without any grumbling and groaning, awesome. She gets to keep her privileges. Everybody's cool. If not, well, then she has made that choice. It's not something you've done to her. It is a choice that she has made because she had the power to do that. All right. So let's go through a couple of the what ifs, some of the questions that y'all have been asking in the chat as I've been going along through the 5 R's. One of the questions that scrolled through was this one. What if the child won't repeat back? What if she is all full of attitude and she's not repeating back? Well, if that is the case for you, that tells you 2 really important things. Number 1, it tells you that she is probably not mature enough to handle the responsibilities that go along with video games. And as her parent, you would be well served to pack up those video games for 3 months or 6 months until she can grow in maturity. It's not a punishment. It's simply a matter of, to enjoy certain privileges, you have to have a certain level of maturity. It's like driving a car or anything else. The other thing it tells you, if she won't repeat back, guys, it tells you that you have a whopping power struggle on your hands. All right, if she's not repeating back, I can bet it's not about the video games. It's about winning. It's about proving to you who's really boss. And I would also bet that if you're having power struggles in this area, you're probably also having power struggles in other areas of your day. Maybe it's the morning routine, bedtime, homework, chores, mealtime. Tell me in the chat if that might be the case, because these power struggles are typically not isolated. If you're having them in one area, it usually means that you're having them in others as well. So go back to those buckets we talked about. It tells you that we've got some work to do with the power bucket. All right, both giving her the positive power she must have, but then also having the tools to diffuse those negative power behaviors in the moment. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, let's talk about this. Let's say you revealed in advance and they repeat back and everything is good, everything's great, and then the kid makes a poor choice. What are you going to do? Well, no big deal. You're going to be totally prepared for this, and let's just be one with this, right? They're going to make a poor choice. They're kids, they're learning, it's going to happen. So when he makes a poor choice, you are going to simply follow through and implement the consequence. But You must be willing to follow through consistently. If you're not willing to follow through, please, guys, I'm begging you, don't even have this conversation. Because if you don't follow through, you're reinforcing to your kids that you're not to be taken seriously. And why should they listen to you? All right, so we're going to make sure that we consistently follow through every time. But when we do implement that consequence, it is very important that we do it without piggybacking. Piggybacking is when we do the I told you so's. And the I told you so's would sound like this. Well, you knew our rule for video games. You knew that if you didn't turn off the video game when I asked, you were going to lose your privileges. So don't get mad at me, young man. You totally did this to yourself. Can you guys hear that I told you so? Piggybacking is when we pile on the I told you so's. We are adding, piling on blame, shame, and pain to a perfectly good consequence. And unfortunately, the minute I start piggybacking, I undo all of the good work that I've done up until this point, because the child is not taking personal responsibility. He's not owning it. It's all about how mean I am. So as hard as it is, because you know what? You did tell him and you're trying to reinforce that point. We have to zip our lips on the piggybacking and instead implement the consequence with dignity for that child. And all you have to do is say, gosh, I see you chose, oops, wrong slide. Sorry, guys. Gosh, I see you chose to lose your video privileges, but I have confidence you'll make a better choice next time. Right? I see you chose to lose your video privileges, but you know what, buddy? This is a learning opportunity, and I know you'll make a better choice next time. Doesn't that feel so much better? That second half of the sentence allows him to save face. That is so important. We have to allow the child to save face. Actually, anybody, if we want anybody to change their behavior, they have to save face. Then they can own it and they can take responsibility for it. This just feels so much better, and I promise you're going to have a much higher likelihood that they're going to make a better choice if we use this format than the whole blame, shame, and pain, and I told you so. All right, let's go through a few more what-if scenarios. What if the child says, but Mom, I forgot, just one more chance, one more chance. If you have a frequent forgetter, I bet that you've been doing a lot of repeating and reminding over the years. Tell me in the chat if that might be the case for you. For those of you who've been repeating and reminding, I want you to, starting at this session, say, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to repeat or remind, because here's what happens. When you walk into the family room and say, now guys, remember what we talked about with video games, remember our new rule, you don't want to lose your privileges, do you? The minute you do that, you are robbing them of the opportunity to learn responsibility. You're wearing a big sign that says, you know what, guys, you really don't have to worry about this rule at all. You don't have to take responsibility because I'll keep bailing you out with reminders. And I know why you do it, because you're a good person and you love your people and you don't want them to lose their privileges. So you keep bailing them out with reminders. But all that does is prevents them from taking responsibility. Kids learn responsibility by making mistakes and experiencing the respectful consequences associated with that. So don't rob your kids of that opportunity. I promise you, if they don't learn to take responsibility for the little stuff, there is no way they're going to take responsibility for the big stuff down the road. So when you follow through and let them experience the respectful consequence, you are doing them a favor. You are creating a learning opportunity that is going to stick with them for life. All right. Now, for those of you who have frequent forgetters, it's important that we set them up for success. So let's talk about that ahead of time. Remember when you're revealing in advance? You're going to say, now, sweetie, I'm not going to be reminding you about this new rule. So what can you do to help you remember our new rule? Okay, everybody, I encourage you to write this down. What can you do to help you remember our new rule? So maybe he needs to make a sign, either in pictures or in words, that he hangs right there on the PlayStation. Or if your child is much younger, you may need to create that visual reminder. But it is your child's job to remember, not yours. All right? All right, let's take this one step further. Let's say you do all these things really well and you reveal in advance, they repeat back to you, you implement the consequence with no piggybacking whatsoever, and you still get the big old meltdown. That could be the tantrum on the floor, or it could be all the verbal stuff. That's not fair. You're so mean. I hate you. You hate me. All that nonsense, right? When that meltdown happens, in whatever form or fashion, toddler to teenage, I want you to remember that the tantrum typically has 3 objectives, and I hope you'll write these down. So important. Number one, she is letting you know that she's not happy. She is expressing her dissatisfaction. Well, guess what? That's okay. It's okay for her to be unhappy. That's part of the learning process. Don't let her miss out on that learning experience. Number two, she's trying to get you to change your mind. She thinks that if she throws a big enough fit, if she badgers and whines and complains and fusses long enough, she is going to wear you down and you're going to change your mind. Guys, tell me in the chat, are you going to do that? After you've done all of this hard work, you're not going to let them change your mind, are you? And I see a lot of you saying, no, 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 good. That's what I like to hear. And number three, she's trying to suck you into the power struggle. And here's how you get sucked right into the power struggle without even realizing it. The minute you respond. Okay, so she's fussing or whining or moaning or groaning, whatever, and you start explaining and justifying and lecturing and all the nonsense that we've already gone through. The minute you do that, you get sucked into that back and forth power struggle. And guess what? We all know who's going to win that battle long term, right? So your objective when that meltdown, these are her objectives. Your objective when the meltdown happens is to ignore it. Just ignore it. As long as your child is safe, not in danger of hurting herself or anybody else or damaging property, you have to ignore it. Because if you don't, if you're talking her down off the ledge, if you're giving her a whole lot of attention, if you get sucked into the power struggle, you are totally reinforcing that behavior, right? Remember we talked earlier that kids only continue the behaviors that work for them. So if you allow the behavior to work by giving it a lot of attention, by getting sucked into the power struggle and getting angry and yelling and all that nonsense, you are totally allowing the behavior to work for the child. And how can we be mad at the child for continuing the behavior, right? So whether or not that works is up to us. So again, as long as the child is safe, not in danger of hurting herself or anybody else or damaging property, you're going to ignore it. Now, one of the understandable questions that always comes up is this. Is it rude to ignore the tantrum? Well, the answer is it depends. I'm not referring, you have to know what kind of meltdown you're dealing with. I'm not referring to the kind of meltdown that happens when we have dragged that child around the mall all day, she missed her nap, she's surviving on a handful of Cheerios, and she just like physically melts down. That child needs immediate comfort in the moment, of course. I'm referring to the manipulative meltdown. It's that I'm not getting my way and I am going to throw a total fit until I do. Tell me in the chat if you know what I mean by that manipulative meltdown. It's the I'm going to badger and negotiate and make your life miserable, toddler to teenage miserable, whatever version that is, until I get my way. That's the manipulative tantrum that you must ignore. Because again, if you don't, you're reinforcing the behavior. You're going to see it again and again. I can see a lot of you know what I mean by the manipulative tantrum. And again, I know this is hard. They may follow you around the house. Totally normal. You just go about your business. Your job is to act totally unimpressed. Unimpressed. I hope you write that down. Remember, your child has a right to have a tantrum, and you have the right to not participate in it. All right, so we're going to talk about a lot more about consequences in just a little bit. But what I want to do is address some. Oh, you know what? I missed something, guys. See, I get so ahead of myself sometimes. Remember I said you're going to ignore the meltdown, ignore the tantrum? Please remember that you are ignoring the behavior, not the child. As soon as that child is calmed down, then you're going to deal with it, right? You're going to do the training and practice the redo and all of that good stuff. Just don't try to do that in the moment when they're escalated, because it's just a big old waste of your time, all right? Okay, so as I was saying, I want to just address some of the behaviors that y'all have been listing in the chat. So I saw things like, what about getting the kids to bed, and sibling rivalry and backtalk and morning dawdling, homework hassles, chore wars, all of these behaviors and so many more. There was questions about public temper tantrums, all sorts of things that I don't even have listed here. But what are the right consequences for those behaviors? Well, in fact, consequences are not the right tool for those behaviors. Remember way back earlier I said if you can't think of the obvious consequence for a particular behavior, it probably means that consequences aren't the right tool. Well, that's the case for most of the behaviors listed here. Consequences are not the right tool. So what I want to do, as I mentioned at the very beginning, is share with you a little bit about our online training program for those of you who want to learn more about consequences and all of the other tools in our toolbox to address a lot of these other power struggles. Then we're going to talk more about consequences, go through more of the what if scenarios, and of course, I'm going to be answering your questions. So for those of you who want to learn more about consequences and the rest of the tools in our toolbox, I really encourage you to check out our Positive Parenting Solutions online video course. The course is, just like it sounds, online, and it's on demand. So instead of you showing up at a certain time for an event, you go through the course whenever it suits your schedule. Maybe that's the middle of the night or from your phone while your kids are at soccer practice. So from any device, you go through it as many times as you want. And this course is not a little ebook. It is truly a masterclass in parenting. And the heart of the masterclass is the toolbox that I've been referring to. And in that toolbox are all of the tools that you need for the back talk and getting kids out the door in the morning and the homework hassles and the chore wars and the tantrums and the whining and the entitlement, all the things that y'all have been mentioning in the chat. There are more than 30 tools in that toolbox, and those are the tools that you need to deal with some of those bigger power struggles. Now, I will teach you how to use the tools, when to use them, even the words to say in the course videos. You have 24/7 access to the videos. Go through them as many times as you want. That's going to teach you how to use all of those tools. And you're also going to go through the parent personality assessment. Remember we talked about this? This is a must-have piece, everyone. If you don't know how your personality is contributing to your child's behavior, I promise you, you are not going to be successful in correcting the child's behavior. There are no good or bad, right or wrong personalities. They're all different, and they all invite different things from our kids. So you need to know your personality style, and most importantly, which tools from that toolbox that you have to focus on the most based on your personality style. The parent personality assessment is in the course. Now, in addition to learning the 30 tools and the personality assessment, you're also going to go through advanced training modules. These are for the big ticket power struggles. So let's take bedtime battles for a second. A lot of you talked about the bedtime battles earlier in the session. There's not one consequence for bedtime battles. I wish there were. It'd be so much easier for all of you. In fact, there are a series of tools that you use. So we have an entire advanced module just on bedtime battles. It's an hour and a half long. I take you step by step exactly which tools to use and when to get your kids going to sleep when you want, sleeping through the night within 1 week. It is life-changing for parents. I'm telling you, I get emails every single week just on this one module talking about how life-changing it is when their kids are sleeping and the parents actually feel like they have an evening to themselves. It is remarkable. All of these power struggles, sibling rivalry, back talk, morning dawdling, homework, all of these have their own module because, again, there's not one consequence for these. All of these big ticket power struggles require a series of tools. The good news for you is you don't have to figure it out. You don't have to do a lot of trial and error and making mistakes. You just follow the plan. We've laid it all out there for you. You just follow it. And if you have questions about any of the plans or if a tool isn't working exactly the way you want, there's also coaching support. So you can sign up for a one-on-one Ask Amy coaching call. You'll speak directly to me, not to somebody on our team, and I'll take you step by step through whatever it is that you're dealing with. We have an action plan, get you right back on track. Parents love the one-on-one coaching support. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You go through the training, whatever it suits your schedule, but when you need help, there's somebody there for you. You don't have to flounder and try to figure it out on your own. And there's also group coaching. So we do collaborative coaching. So with a lot of different parents, so you can learn from each other because you will learn from the struggles and successes that other parents are experiencing. So what I'm going to do is, there's one more thing I forgot to mention. There's also a Gold members exclusive Facebook page. So just for our members, again, where you can support and encourage other parents in the program and learn from them. So what I'm going to do is go through the pricing so you have that, and then I'm going to get back into consequences because I have a lot more important what-if scenarios to cover with you on consequences. So the course itself, we have 3 levels: bronze, silver, and gold. And if you are enrolled at the bronze level, you have the 42 training videos, the 30 tools in the toolbox, all of the downloadable workbooks that go along with those sessions, and 1 year access to this course. If you are a silver member, you have everything in the bronze group, but you have lifetime access. So think about whatever age your kids are right now. They're going to go in and out of different stages. You're always going to have this course. And the good news for you is we're always adding new content, always adding new modules. Anything that we add to it, you will have access to that as a lifetime member. We have live members only events that are just for our course members. They are not open to the public like this. And we have those advanced power struggle modules. So remember the big ticket power struggles that I told you about? Again, the silver members have all of those advanced modules at their disposal to go through them as many times as you want. And for those of you who enroll at the gold level, you get the coaching support. So the one-on-one coaching with me, the group coaching with other parents, and that private Facebook community. So as a recovering yeller myself, I cannot tell you how life-changing it is when you have the tools, you know what to do when misbehavior pops up. So I would love for you to dive in, go deeper. We've barely touched the surface today. I'd love for you to dive deeper into these tools. And so to encourage you to do that, I wanted to share with you a 10% discount if you're interested in enrolling on any of these levels, and a 1-level upgrade for free. So the way that works is you could get 10% off the bronze pricing and get an automatic upgrade to our silver course. Or you can get a 10% discount off of the silver course and get an automatic upgrade to gold as long as you're enrolled within 24 hours. So the pricing, if you were going to upgrade to silver, so figure that's 10% off bronze and get automatically upgraded to silver, your bottom line price is either $179 or 12 payments of $17.95. If you wanted to upgrade to gold, again, after the discount and the upgrade, the bottom line price is $224 or 12 payments of $22.45. Now, whether you pick the 1 payment or the 12 payments, after you're done paying for the course, you have it forever. It's not like you get an annual charge. You have it forever. That's all you pay. And if you choose the 12 payments, you get immediate access. Right? The minute you sign up, you have immediate access to everything, all of the tools. And just remember, for those of you who want the coaching support, make sure that you upgrade to gold, because only the gold has the coaching support from me. If you have any concerns or any reservations, I do want you to know that we have a 30-day, no questions asked, money-back guarantee. If for any reason you don't love it, you don't even have to call us and tell us why. You just send us an email and we will refund your money immediately that same day. So you have the next 30 days. Go through every single video. Go through those advanced power struggle modules. Get on an Ask Amy coaching call with me. Go through the parent personality assessment. Go through all the interactive modules. Download the workbooks. Do it all. If you don't love it to pieces, if you don't love the support that you're getting, again, you just send us an email. We'll refund your money. No questions asked. We totally want you to love it, and we guarantee that you will. So if you are interested in enrolling, just 5 quick, easy steps. First, click on the purchase button. You decide whether you want the silver upgrade or the gold. Don't even worry about bronze, because you're going to get automatically upgraded, right? So decide on silver or gold, decide 1 payment or 12, and then write down this coupon code, everybody. No more yelling 10. No more yelling 10. You have to enter that in so you get the discount. And then once you pay for it, boom, you have it all. You are going to get started right in session 1. Now, when I work with parents and they're like, oh, should we do this? Should we not? The top 2 questions that I always get are this. Number 1, should I spend the money? It's a valid question, right? Because we all have a budget. But when I dig into this, I typically find that the question is not so much, should I spend the money? Can we afford the $20-ish a month, depending on if you get silver or gold? Can we afford it? Because if we all think about it, all of the money that we spend in the course of a month, we could probably find $20, right? If we knew that we were going to put an end to the back talk and the bedtime battles and the chore wars, and our kids would be helping out around the house and everything wouldn't feel like a battle and we weren't yelling anymore, would we spend $20 roughly to do that? Yes, of course we would. That's a no-brainer. I think the bigger question is this one. Will it really work? How do I know that it's going to work for me and my family? Amy says it's going to, but how do I know? Well, I don't know you and I don't know your family yet. However, I will tell you that we've had more than 60,000 parents on 6 continents go through our various training programs with rave reviews. So I really do feel like it's going to work for you. And again, if for any reason it doesn't, we've got that 100% money back guarantee. I will tell you that our return rate, the people who ask for their money back, is less than 1/2 of 1%. It's so low, it doesn't even register. And this is unheard of. I think Amazon would be killing themselves to have this kind of return rate. But the reason I believe for that is that parents love the program. The tools work, the confidence of having that toolbox whenever something comes up, that is peace of mind for parents, and it's always there for them with their lifetime access. So my encouragement to you is to try it. The only way that you're going to know whether it works for your family is to give it a whirl. And again, if for any reason you don't love it, we guarantee your satisfaction there. So if you have more questions about the course, let us know in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer those in a little bit as well. But for right now, I've got some more content on consequences that I want to share with you. Some of the frequently asked questions that I tend to hear. So let's dig into those a little bit more. One of the questions that always comes up is this, Amy, what if I didn't reveal a consequence in advance? Because you know how things are, stuff just happens. Sometimes behaviors happen out of the blue and you wouldn't have revealed a consequence, right? Well, if that is the case for you and a behavior just happened, well, you don't need a consequence. The first time a behavior happens, that is always your training opportunity. So you talk about what happened, what's okay, what's not okay. For younger kids, you practice the redo. If you feel like it's something that could happen again, go ahead and reveal consequences for next time and have them repeat back to you. But you don't need a consequence then. As we talked about earlier, discipline comes from the Latin root discipulus, which means to teach or to train. So we always start with training. You may need consequences down the road, but you definitely don't want to start there. All right, the next question that always comes up is this. My kids could care less. We've tried this consequence thing, Amy. My kids could care less. Well, if that is the case for you, I promise you 100% there is something going on there. There's something else happening. Either the consequence that you established was really punishment. It was really blame, shame, or pain in disguise. You didn't understand this concept, so how would you have known? But that's what happened, and as a result, the anger gets turned on you. Or it was one of those unrelated, willy-nilly consequences we talked about. And again, if it's willy-nilly, if it's unrelated, the anger gets turned on you. As we talked about, your kids don't have to like the consequence, but it must feel fair. So if it's willy-nilly, it's not feeling fair, that might be one of the things that are going on. So if either of those things are happening, you can bet that your child's going to be like, yeah, whatever, I don't care, big whoop. Because it's all about the power struggle. It's all about winning. It's about proving to you who's really boss. So that should be a red flag that the consequence was probably not structured well in the first place. But again, that's something that I can help you with. And then what about this one? I can't think of a good consequence. Well, if you can't think of a good consequence that is respectful, related, that's the hardest one, is reasonable in duration that you can reveal in advance and have them repeat back to you. Again, that tells you that consequences are not the right tool. Please, my friends, I beg you, do not fall into the trap of thinking that when kids behave, when they're not doing what they're supposed to do, boom, they need a consequence. Well, sometimes they do need a consequence. Probably 10 to 15% of the time, we're going to be using consequences. That will be the appropriate tool. But for the other 85 to 90% of the time, it's going to be some other tool in the toolbox. That's why we have 30 tools. If all you needed was consequences, I would just send you a list. I'd say, okay, here's all the possible misbehaviors. Here are the consequences. Go to town. But that's not the way human behavior works. We use different tools for different situations. Some of the tools are going to give your kids more positive power because you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, I know they need power, but how do I do that? The tools in the toolbox make that happen. Some of the tools help you diffuse that power struggle in the moment when it's happening. Some of the tools are going to help you change your response, your reaction based on your parent personality type. So again, different tools for different situations, but I'll teach you how to do all that. So my friends, I want to just wrap up with a couple of really important things. First, the vision that we talked about at the very beginning. is that very soon you won't even remember the last time that you raised your voice. That is what I want for you so much. I want that point where you have the tools, you know exactly what to do. Your routines are humming. They're running like clockwork. Your kids are doing what they're supposed to do without a lot of fuss and pushback. They are helping out around the house. You are operating as a team. You're not yelling anymore. Is everything perfect? Heavens no. But again, when things come up, you have your toolbox, you know exactly what to do. And if you're not sure what to do, you have me. You have the course to always come back to. So that is what I would love to help. I'd love for that to happen at your house. The one thing I know for sure from my personal experience and from working with thousands of parents around the world is that change does not happen by chance. It doesn't happen by wishing and hoping and praying they're going to go out of the stage. It doesn't happen that way because one power struggle morphs into another, into another. It happens by choice, by choosing to do something different, choosing tools that are going to be so much more effective for you and so much more empowering for your kids. I will tell you, when you start using the toolbox in session 1, the very first tool that you start using is a game changer. It will truly change the way your kids see you. It is going to change the way you feel about yourself as a parent. It's going to change your child's behavior. Within the first 2 to 3 days, you are going to see a measurable difference in your child's behavior. With each tool that you add, it's going to get better and better and better. So I would love for you to experience that transformation in your family. Now, again, as I said earlier, I'm going to be sending you a thank you gift for being here, my 5 favorite tips for battling back talk. That's going to come to you in an email after this session. And as I said earlier, too, I'm going to stay on and answer questions. So I would love to answer any questions that you have about consequences or any questions that you have about the online course. Bring it on. I am here to answer the questions that you have. So let me get a little drink and see what we have. Okay. Jason, what if I buy silver and want upgrade to gold? Okay, Jason, within that first 30 days, you can do that. So if you enroll in silver and then decide, oh, I really would like to have that coaching support, you can do it within the 30 days, and we can do that for you at the same promotion price that I gave you here today. Okay. Corinne asks, are you a psychologist? No, Corinne, I'm not actually. I'm a certified positive discipline instructor. I've been studying these Adlerian, remember I told you everything is based on Adlerian psychology. I've been studying these Adlerian principles for the past 17 years. I've been teaching these tools to parents for the past 12 years. I'm the founder of Positive Parenting Solutions. I told you that earlier. I'm also a Today Show parenting contributor. I've also appeared on CNN, CBS, MSNBC, Rachel Ray, Steve Harvey, and a bunch of others. So I've been doing this for a really long time, but I'm a parent like you. I have been in your shoes. I'm a recovering yeller. So I don't know, you'd have to tell me, but I think that gives me a unique perspective, having walked in your world, to be able to understand what you're going through and understand the kind of help and support that you need. That's why I created this program, because I wanted parents to have a simple step-by-step way that they could tackle this, right? So kind of just walking you through the process step by step. And again, my expertise is developing training programs to help parents learn in a way that's fun and easy. So I hope that's what I've accomplished with this, but you'll have to tell me if that's the case. All right, let me see where else. I'm trying to read it's kind of scrolling a little bit quick for me. Okay, Jay asks, what is the right consequence for kids who won't eat their dinner? Every night is a battle. My wife and I dread it. I've actually been there too. Okay, so here's the thing about mealtime. Remember I said early on the 3 classic power struggles for younger kids are mealtime, bedtime, and pottying. Okay, so mealtime is one of those classic ones, and it starts so early. Remember when your kids started on solid food and you started doing the airplane game, trying to get them to eat? So it starts right there because you're making a game out of making the kid eat. They realize that they get a lot of attention for that. When we're sitting at the table, we say, oh, just try one more bite. Oh, you know you like it. How do you know if you won't like it? Just lick it. Just try it. We give all this attention around eating. And then they realize, oh, this is a really big deal to mom and dad. They care a lot about what I eat and how much I eat. So it becomes this total power thing where the child basically gets to the point where he's like, I'm not eating it. I'm not eating that broccoli. I don't care what you say. I'm not eating the broccoli. So it becomes this total power thing where we're coaxing and prodding every single night. We're getting angry and frustrated. It is a total source of power. So that is why in the course there is an entire module just on the mealtime issue. And we've gone out to leading experts in this area. I love this module because it takes all the power out of it. All right. So again, even if you're big time in the throes of mealtime battles, it's not too late. We can totally get you out of that very quickly. Again, there's always a step-by-step process that we follow. For those of you who aren't there yet, you'll also want to go through this to make sure you don't get to that point. So Jay, hopefully that helps that issue a little bit. Okay, Misty says, will the tools work for kids with special needs? So, Misty, I don't know what your particular situation is. However, I will tell you that we have parents in our program with children with learning differences, social differences, sensory differences, and these tools work beautifully. You want to think about these tools as your foundation tools. You've got to have these pieces in place. Now, depending on where your child is on, whatever spectrum, then there may be other therapies that are involved. But you want to have these issues in place because how do the specialists know exactly which therapies are required? Is this behavior a result of that child's difference, or is it just a behavior thing that we could totally easily correct with these foundation tools? So I think that you will be very pleased with the way these tools work for children with a variety of differences. But again, that's something that you can get into and discover in the first 30 days. If this just does not meet your needs and your needs are just much different, then no problem whatsoever. We'll refund your money on that. So Misty, hopefully helps that question. Okay, Nisha asks, what if both parents are not on the same page? Will it still work? And there were some questions in the chat about that earlier. Yes, absolutely. So the way the course is laid out, it is in these the short videos that I told you where I teach you how to use the tools. That works perfectly for parents who aren't on the same page because you can say, honey, I just need you to watch these couple of videos on sibling rivalry or homework castles or whatever it is. It's a great way to bring them into the process in a very non-threatening way. It's not you telling them what to do. It's me, the outside person, coming with the tools based on the science. And it's a great way to get them involved. The other thing that you're going to do, Nisha, is you're going to be modeling the tools. You're going to be using them with your kids, and your partner is going to see, oh, you know what? That actually works. So again, you're not going to tell him or her what to do, but you're going to model the behavior, and they're going to see it works and going to be much more likely to take it on. So I am pretty good at getting parents both on the same page. I will tell you that. So you can, and in the coaching sessions, both parents can be on. Or if both parents can't, just remind me and I can record the session for you. And that way I can send you the file and you can share it with your partner. And parents like to do that as well. Okay, there was a question about sibling rivalry. So let's talk about that. That is a huge issue, as I'm sure many of you know, because the sibling relationship right now is going to affect a sibling relationship down the road, how that adult relationship is. So we want to get a handle on that. We want it to be a loving, encouraging relationship. We're not just interested in stopping the fights in the moment. We want to foster a lifelong positive relationship. And again, sibling battles are normal. All families have them, but we want to be able to manage them. So the way we tackle this is in a couple of ways. It's actually 4 different buckets. The first one is understanding how we as parents contribute to the sibling rivalry. You are going to be shocked to find out the things that you're doing that you don't even realize that are totally fueling the competition between your kids. So that's the first thing. How do we contribute? Because again, we know we play a role. Number 2, how do we deal with a fight in that moment? Right? When that breaks out in the moment, what do you do? And again, I can almost guarantee you the way you're responding right now is escalating the fight. Number 3, we have to teach them the conflict resolution strategies. So siblings are going to have arguments. Nothing wrong with that, but we need to teach them the conflict resolution strategies so they know how to deal with it in positive ways. That's our job. And the beautiful thing about this is it's going to help with the sibling relationship, but it's going to help them with conflict resolution with their adult relationships, at their work, with their future spouse. I mean, you are truly giving them lifelong tools in this process. And then the fourth bucket is, how do we prevent those fights from breaking out in the future? Because we don't want to just keep putting out fights, right? That's crazy. But how do we prevent them from happening in the future? The amazing thing about this process is you are going to get out of the referee business. I don't want you to be refereeing their fights. That does not serve them, and it doesn't serve you, certainly. So it's kind of a 4-bucket process. I know that's kind of a long explanation, but again, I don't want you to fall into thinking that, oh, you just need one quick consequence and boom, that's going to help your sibling rivalry. We take it for you step by step, break it down so it's easy. You take it in little chunks and you see success every step of the way. Okay, Rosemary, are the tools for tweens and teens or just for little kids? All ages, Rosemary. So you can start when your child is as young as 18 months. Now, at 18 months, all of the tools are not going to be applicable, of course. But once they get to 2.5, really all the tools in the toolbox, you can start using them all the way up to teens. I mentioned to you earlier that I have teenagers, and I use every one of these tools with my kids. So absolutely. Now the tools are similar, but we're going to apply them in different ways. Of course, depending on what the age of the course, or depending on what the age of the kids are. Okay, let me see what other questions, let me see what other questions that I can answer for you. Let's see. Okay, Latara says, can we have access to the course from any computer? Latara, yes, you can. So you can access it from your computer, your iPad, iPhone. You can do it from work. You and your spouse can both do it. So if any computer or any device, you can absolutely do that. Ingrid, can both parents do the parent personality assessment? Yes, absolutely. You can both do the assessment. So you're going to purchase this course for your family. All right. So you and your husband, you and your spouse can go through all the videos, through the parent personality assessment as many times as you want. Okay. Antonia says, what is the right consequence for a kid who won't do homework? Okay. Glad you asked this question. Very important. Because I think what tends to happen is when there is an issue with homework or school, we parents like get totally panicky and we like crack down. And unfortunately, that typically doesn't work. So let's use homework as the example. This is a great example of a behavior that typically starts out as attention seeking in nature. So when they're younger, Daddy, I need you to sit here and do the worksheets with me. I need you to do it with me. I can't do it. I need your help. It's very attention seeking in nature. And so you fall into this pattern of having to sit with the kid and do all of their homework. Then it kind of escalates to a power struggle where the child is basically saying, no, I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it. I know it's important to you. I'm not going to do it. So we have to sort of dig into where we are, what stage are we in, so we know which tools to use. The other thing that we have to dig into is there a learning difference? All right. Very often, by the time kids are, getting to 2nd grade or 3rd grade, the work is becoming a little bit more difficult. And if there is a learning difference that has not been diagnosed, very often the child will check out. Math stinks. I hate reading. I don't care about school. Because acting like they don't care, putting on that face of false bravado is a safer place for them to be, rather than owning up to the fact that they can't keep up, they're falling behind, and they're discouraged. So if that's the case, and we're bringing on consequences, taking away video games, talk about willy-nilly, right? That's totally unrelated. If that's what we're doing and there's something else going on there, boy, have we missed the boat. Have we done that child a disservice? So you will learn how to dig in. You'll learn how to get to the root of what the issue is. And then based on that, then we know which tool to use. Okay, Benjamin, how does the coaching work? So Benjamin, the way it works is, again, the coaching is only for gold members. But if you are a gold member, you have access to the coaching for a year. You can schedule them as often as every other week, depending on what your needs are. But to schedule a coaching call, you're going to click on the link inside the course. You're going to go to my scheduling calendar. You're going to see all the scheduling times that I have available, and you'll pick one. If for some reason you don't see a time that works for you or your time zone is different, just send me an email and I'll get you a time. Don't worry about that at all. Then once you're signed up for a call, you're going to fill out a coaching form because I want to know what is going on in your world, because I prepare for every single coaching call. I do not wing it. And so you're going to send your coaching form ahead of time. I'll know what's going on, what tools you're using, what's working, what isn't. And then we will get on the call and boom, 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 we'll get you right back on track. If you are within the United States, we'll do that by phone. I'm located in the US. If you are outside of the US, we'll do that by Skype. But again, I try to be of service to my parents as best I can. Parents love the coaching calls, and they feel empowered. They get right back on track. So again, you'll go through the videos and the learning on your own as it suits your schedule, but I'm here if you do need that. Okay, let's see. Back talk. Okay, there's always a lot of questions about back talk. That is another one of those, I call it an umbrella behavior. It's an umbrella behavior because it is always a symptom of something else. All right. Back talk, not listening, those are umbrella behaviors. We need to dig down. What is the deeper issue there? What are they not listening about? Then we know what we need to dig into. What tools do we need to use? I wish I could just give you a blanket. Okay, when kids aren't listening, this is what you do. But again, human behavior just does not work that way. Okay, my friends, I hope that I have answered most of your questions. I know I've missed some because I'm not that good at multitasking. So while I'm reading the chat and trying to watch slides, I know I miss things. So if I missed your question, please send us an email. You can do that at info@positiveparentingsolutions.com. We'll get back to you right away with a response. And again, I do apologize if I missed something along the way. I'm sure that I did. So just send us an email and we will definitely get back to you as quickly as we can. So I want to leave you with a big thank you. Thank you for investing this time to participate in this session. I hope that the tools that we've talked about today are helpful to you. Again, we have just barely scratched the surface on consequences. We have so much more. In fact, on consequences, the entire session 3 is just devoted to consequences, so much more ground than we could ever cover in this session. And there's an advanced module just on consequences. So a lot to cover on that topic, as well as all of the other 30 tools in the toolbox. So I would love to help you learn those tools so you feel like you have what you need to be successful at the most important job we'll ever have, right? We get training in so many other aspects of our life, but really not any training other than maybe Lamaze class for the most important job that we'll ever do. So I would love to help you make that happen. If you have any questions, let us know. Be happy to answer that for you. But thanks for being here for this session. I wish you the best of luck in using the tools that we've talked about today. And most of all, I wish you parenting peace.